Welcome back to Eat This Girl podcast with Allison and Lizzie. We're so glad that you've joined us to study James chapter 5. So if you want to go grab a Bible, a journal, and a pen, we'll be back in just a second.
Hey everyone, we're so glad that you are joining us for this episode of Eat the Scroll. We're super excited to get into James chapter 5 and just finish up James. But before we do, we just want to have a little, I guess this would be a culture conversation. So Allison, why don't you kick us off with that?
Hello. I have an interesting topic that we're going to process together, I guess. So I recently I watched a podcast clip of this well-known conservative person giving her thoughts on artificial insemination. And she called it demonic, which is a strong word.
Yeah.
But I was just curious about your thoughts on it. I didn't listen to too much of it. I don't really remember why she thinks that, but have you heard of that concept?
I have.
Why people think that it's an ungodly way to go? Like, what's the vibe? Like, why do people think that it's so bad? Artificial insemination is
the information that I know,
right.
Which feel free to fact check me because I can always be wrong.
Yes.
Artificial insemination is a lot of times people who are having fertility struggles resort to this if they have the money to resort to this, because as far as I know, it's a very expensive process.
Yeah.
And it is, it's essentially what it sounds like. Like, there is usually an egg or multiple eggs that are harvested. I don't know if that's the right word, but taken from the mother, and then there's the sperm from the father.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to
Welcome to science class.
I'm not trying to give science lesson here, but
and they just put them together outside the bodies of the humans.
Yes, in order to, I guess, increase the chance of survival.
Okay.
Now, granted, I'm sure there's so much more complicated stuff that goes into it than just that simple process, but in layman's terms, I think that's essentially what it is. As for people thinking that it's demonic or at least ungodly, which if it's ungodly, I don't know that wouldn't be demonic necessarily. But I think that stems from the fact that, one, God is the ultimate giver of life. And so I think some people view it as people trying to
play God.
Yeah, and kind of take life into their own hands.
Oh, that makes sense.
So that's one avenue of thought.
Okay.
The other is, I think it's becoming more common to freeze your embryos.
Right.
I will use a scientific term. In my mind, it is a child. I just want to put that out there.
Yes. A baby.
But I think I recently read an article that was sent to both of us, actually. You remember that? Anyways.
About what?
About
this?
The freezing of embryos.
Oh.
And so as far as I know, it's becoming more common to do that. Now, I think it's one thing to, freeze your eggs. I know people who are getting ready to go into chemo and stuff like that, they will oftentimes do that so that they have at least some chance of having a child later. And I don't have a problem with that. I think it's an egg and you can...
Right.
You can freeze that if you will. I do think that morally, this is my opinion.
Yeah.
I don't think that it's morally right to freeze an embryo, because it's
freeze it or to do you just said it was okay to do that.
The egg on its own.
Oh, freeze an embryo.
Yes.
Freeze
the baby. After the egg and the sperm have come together. And conception has happened. And that is a child, and you are freezing. You're just putting it in a freezer for whenever you happen to want it.
I'm just uninformed. That's wild to me that we can do that.
I think that's wrong. I really do. And people
Oh
might
my
come at me for
gosh.
that, but I don't think we have the right to just put life on hold until we decide that
Until
it's time.
we're ready for it.
Like, the Lord is the ultimate
Especially
giver and
when
taker of life.
It's like both parties.
Yeah, like, it is a conceived child.
It's
like,
a conceived child.
and
In a
if
petri dish, in a freezer.
Yes, and like, if we're going to go off on abortion and how life begins at conception, life begins at conception, whether it happens inside the womb or not. That's a child.
Wow. I get the concept
Yes.
of playing God. Like, that makes total, like, I see why people
Yeah, and I think
might
also
hold
with
that as
that, because God is the giver and taker of life, I mean, that's biblical. I think maybe that's where just IVF in general, people can find it problematic, because especially a lot of, like, uber conservative, and I'm not trying to make this political. It's not necessarily political, but I just know that people who lean that way and are on the especially extreme side of it oftentimes feel this way, that if you are doing anything that goes outside of the natural means of God giving life,
yes,
then you're going against him. I don't necessarily know how I feel. I feel like I do kind of understand that and see that. I've not personally clarified my convictions on that.
right.
But
Well, it's hard to find stuff like that in Scripture. You have to
Yes.
take, like, obviously the Bible doesn't talk about artificial insemination, but if you can, like, kind of find concepts in the Bible and principles that would apply to this, that's kind of how you would navigate this as a Christian, I guess.
Yes. And I think where I maybe struggle with it is that sometimes the language used for it can belittle the fact that it's life.
Yeah.
I think it, now granted, I want to be sensitive to the fact that I have never been in a situation where I felt like this was my only option.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I
Yes.
really, like, if anyone is listening out there and you have struggled with fertility or you've gone through IVF, like, please know there's zero judgment. There's
Yeah.
zero, like, this is just me in my mind trying to process this from a biblical perspective.
Yeah.
I've seen times, and I'm not saying everyone does this because I know it's a very personal and very emotional process. And most of the time people are doing it because they just desperately want a child. And I respect that with everything in me.
Yeah.
I have seen times where if it's unsuccessful, like I don't know what the word is, like implant the embryo or whatever, put it back into the mother's womb. And it's unsuccessful. Like, I've not heard the term miscarriage. I've not heard that, like, to me, when I've heard it, it was just an unsuccessful insemination or
After
whatever
it was
is.
already conceived?
Yes.
Interesting.
So that's where I'm
language.
like, are we belittling the fact that it was life? I don't know. Now, again, it's not like I have tons of experience with this. I'm just going off of, like, videos I've seen online and stuff like that.
Well, it's
people talking
honestly a
about
lot, like, the language that's used around this is a lot just like he said, it's like whatever vocabulary you prefer to use.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Because, like, because we believe in, like, life at conception, we would call it a miscarriage.
Yes.
People that don't believe that, I get why they're like, oh, it didn't work.
And I'm not saying
of
that they
thing.
aren't heartbroken. Like, I know that they probably absolutely
it's
are.
just as painful. It doesn't matter what you call it. It's just as
Yes.
painful because you're trying to have a baby. But
Yes. So I think that's just where, like, people
Yeah.
can get this idea that it's demonic or it's unbiblical because there's the language stuff and there's this "are you playing God" stuff.
I think it's the "are you playing God" thing. I think that's what could get Christians really, really riled up. If you know, because as painful as it is, like, we can want and want and want and want to have a baby.
But is it all right to force it, kind of thing?
But how far will we go to make it happen if it's actually just not God's will?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's a really hard spot to be in. That's really painful.
Yeah. And I think out of all of it, because I could do a lot more research on it. But the one thing that I would say, given my current knowledge, I am 100% against is the freezing of embryos. I don't think there's any reason why that should ever be okay.
Yeah.
And that might be...
It's giving Matrix.
I'm like...
I don't know.
Why... I don't think that's ever okay.
Right. And you're allowed to have your personal opinion. We can't, it's hard like we said, before you go into it biblically and all that stuff, it's hard to, because you don't want to make anybody feel shame or anything about choices that they make.
Yes. And please,
in really hard positions.
I just feel like I really need to hit home on the fact that, if you are listening to this and you are currently in the midst of a fertility battle or you've struggled with this in the past, whatever, I have so much love and compassion for you. We don't have, neither of us have kids yet, but it's hopefully going to be very near future for Kyle and I.
Yeah.
And it's something that I so desperately want, and the thought of not being able to, just the thought of that devastates me.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's so much love and compassion for anyone who's in that situation and finds yourself in a place where you are considering IVF, and I have no idea what that's like, and so who knows if I were ever in that situation, which I pray I'm not. But who knows?
Wouldn't know, though, because neither of us have tried. It's likely, I don't know what the statistics are, but I feel like more and more women are struggling with infertility.
Yes, and there's some, I could get into all
who knows what we're going to be faced with. I mean,
yeah.
So we might be in that same position in a few years. Who knows?
I think the statistic is that 1 in 3 women will have a miscarriage.
I hate that statistic.
I think that's it. I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure last I heard that was the statistic.
I hate that statistic. I also think about, this is kind of going backwards. Actually, we're going to end it. That's a very good note to end it on. That's good.
Not the miscarriage statistic, but the fact that we just have so much love and compassion.
That there is love and compassion and grace for people in these situations, 100%.
Yeah, my personal opinion and us trying to work through what we think about it and the morality and the biblical viewpoint is... It has no claim over who anyone is as a person,
right?
Or their validity, or their, their ability to be loved and valued and
by God, and by others. Yeah, 100%.
This is just us talking it out and
talking about this idea,
yeah.
Because right now, to me, it is an idea.
Yeah.
Because it's so...
It's relatively new in the grand scheme of history.
In the grand scheme of everything. This is such a new concept.
Yes. Okay, so let's get into James chapter 5. So if you're able and you have your Bibles and you want to follow along with us, we'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. If you're on YouTube, all of the things. So
let's get into it.
You want to start?
I'll start.
All right.
Okay, James chapter 5. I'm using the NLT. She's using... NIV. Cool. My little subtitle says, Warning to the Rich.
Mine says, Warning to Rich Oppressors.
Can you be one without the other? Yeah. You can.
But it's really easy to...
You can be a rich, godly person. You can.
You absolutely
There are
can.
rich, godly people.
But it's
100%.
easy to be a rich oppressor. Yes.
Okay. Verse 1. Look here, you rich people. Weep and groan with anguish because of all the terrible troubles ahead of you. Your wealth is rotting away, and your fine clothes are moth-eaten rags. Your gold and silver are corroded. The very wealth you are counting on will eat away your flesh like fire. This corroded treasure you have hoarded will testify against you on the day of judgment.
Sorry, can we pause there?
Yes.
I just need to go back. So in our last episode, I talked about how I had read something in 1 Corinthians about the final day of judgment and all of that. So if you didn't listen to our last episode, go back. But in that same passage in 1 Corinthians just fits so well right here. So it's in 1 Corinthians 2.
Girl, you picked that out? I love it.
Was it 2 or 3? No, sorry, 1 Corinthians 3. So it's Paul talking about how people are still being worldly because they're quarreling and they're jealous and all of these things. And they're fighting over who's better, Apollos or Paul. And so he says this in verse 10. So 1 Corinthians 3, starting in verse 10. By the grace God has given me, I laid a foundation as a wise builder, and someone else, Apollos, is building on it. But each one should build with care, for no one can lay any foundation other than the one already laid, which is Jesus Christ. If anyone builds on this foundation using gold, silver, costly stones, wood, hay, or straw, their work will be shown for what it is, because the day will bring it to light, and day is capitalized, and it's referencing
When Jesus comes back?
Yes, the day that Jesus comes back and judges. It will be revealed with fire, and the fire will test the quality of each person's work. If what has been built survives, the builder will receive a reward. If it is burned up, the builder will suffer loss, but yet will be saved, even though only as one escaping through the flames. And it just, when it says here, your gold and silver are corroded, their corrosion will testify against you and eat your flesh like fire. You have hoarded wealth in the last days. It's just like spot on with what Paul is talking about, of how whatever your foundation is, that's going to be tested in the fire.
It's going to be tested in the fire to see if it's worthy and see if you chose the right foundation.
Yes.
Like what is eternal and what is not eternal.
Yeah.
What will stick around. Cool.
Man. Sorry, I just
that's
love
good.
that connection.
I love connections. And I love it because it's two different authors.
Yeah.
Like we can see a lot of similarities in like Paul's letters because the author's Paul.
Mm-hmm.
But seeing a similarity between Paul and James,
It's just proof that it was the Spirit.
it hits different. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Okay, cool. Verse 4. For listen, hear the cries of the field workers whom you have cheated of their pay. The cries of those who harvest your fields have reached the ears of the Lord of heaven's armies.
Mm-hmm.
You want me to keep going?
Yeah, let's finish this little section and then we'll talk.
Okay. Verse 5. You have spent your years on earth in luxury, satisfying every desire. You have fattened yourselves for the day of slaughter. You have condemned and killed innocent people who do not resist you.
Man. Okay, here's what sticks out to me the most. Is verse 5. It says in my version, it says, you have lived on earth in luxury and self-indulgence. You have fattened yourselves in the day of slaughter. And the way that is worded, it's like you
intense.
are preparing yourself for your own slaughter. Like when we think about fattening of animals,
fattening a
when
calf
you
or
put a
something.
cow on pasture or something to fatten them up,
Mm-hmm.
like it's you doing that for your provision to make sure that cow is ready so you can get the most meat possible. Mm-hmm. But when he's saying you fattened yourselves, it's like you're putting yourself out on pasture. You have already succumbed to the fact that you're going to get slaughtered, and you don't even realize that you're out in that pasture just waiting for the butcher to come around.
That's so scary. That's a very scary image to me.
Yeah.
Visually, I'm like, it reminds me of like a horror movie.
Yes. And I think, I don't necessarily mean to, compare God to a butcher. That sounds kind of intense, I realize.
Well,
but the fact that,
it's a metaphor.
Yeah, I mean, he will tear down those who are trying to build themselves up.
Against him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't like that.
Yeah. I like that it says, you have condemned and killed innocent people who do not resist you. I think, obviously, that's talking about just like the defenseless people. I think about, when I read this passage, my mind immediately goes to the unethical treatment of children and adults who are forced labor, in other countries, that have really big problems with forced labor and how they treat their employees. I also think about I go to the scene from Les Mis where all the women are working in the factory and those two leader guys who are just taking all the money, and the women barely get anything, not even enough to feed themselves, and they're treated so poorly. I think that's just a really good picture to have.
All of these
defenseless
ways.
people who aren't able to stand up against you, and you're just taking advantage of them.
Yeah.
And you're satisfying your desires at the cost of people's livelihood.
Yeah. And often their lives.
Icky people. I will admit to a lot of things, but I'm very happy to say I'm not, like,
Same.
you know, I'm like,
I do a lot of things wrong.
I do a lot of things
This ain't
wrong.
one of them.
But I don't do that. I think it can get muddy, though, in the way, because we think about, like, when you think about fast fashion, if we buy fast fashion,
yes,
we're partially contributing to things like this.
And
like,
you're so good to speak against stuff like that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, I still feel
I learned so much about that from you, though.
I'm not a completely sustainable, ethical consumer
But
at all.
you're
Nobody
very
is.
aware.
But I try to be aware of it, especially with, like,
Yeah.
So
And
it's hard because we want to be conscious of every dollar that we spend. Like, really, so in the context that, like, we're Americans, and this is the part that we do play in things like this. So I'm going to go back on what I said, because, yeah, I might not do this firsthand, but
you might be supporting someone who
I
does.
contribute to it because I have $1. And where do I put my $1? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That makes me emotional. And that's why it's important to know what you're buying, what brands you support, what brands you don't. It's important.
It is important.
At least to me it is, because I don't want to be a part of this.
Yes.
I do not want to be a part of this.
But here's where, like, the hope in all of that is, it says the cries of the harvesters have reached the ears of the Lord Almighty.
Yeah.
Or in your version it said the Lord of Heaven's armies.
Yes.
Which is like their cries, the cries of these people who are being taken advantage of, the cries of the people who are being condemned, even though they're innocent. Their cries have reached his ears.
That's
And
beautiful.
His ears are never deaf to the cries of his people.
Right. Those are the people that he's going to save first.
Yeah.
The humble and lowly.
Yeah. But man, that does make me emotional. Like,
that's why it's so important.
oh my gosh.
It's so important to know what you're purchasing.
I just think, like, how many dollars have I put into the pockets of people who do this?
Right? It's very emotional.
And unknowingly, of course.
Unknowingly, like, you would never, like, if you found out that, like, a brand was, like, doing terrible things and had really unethical policies and procedures, like, you would be like, okay, I'm not going to buy from them anymore. But it's so hard. Like, I think it's really easy to get overwhelmed at the amount of research that you can do to try to find out what brands are ethical and what brands aren't ethical. But it's so worth it when you think about that there are human beings behind this brand that, like, have the lowest quality of life. Yeah. Like, they're literally just working for a penny at the expense of us having, like, a certain mascara or, like, a certain...
Or just, like, to get whatever we want at the cheapest price possible.
To get whatever we want at the cheapest price.
Like, do you really... Do we really value our money that much that we're willing to hold on to more of it?
So that...
at the expense of supporting something like that.
Right, at the expense of human suffering.
Like, what's more important, the expense of your pocketbook or the expense of a human life?
Exactly. I'll take it one step further, because I will admit, and I don't think this is right of me, but this is just how I came to be passionate about things like this. It started out with, like, animal cruelty and, like, animal testing. That's where I started, where I was like, this is unjust, and I will not give my money to a brand that is not cruelty-free. And then I learned, I was like, oh my gosh, like, there's so much more unethical things that happen to humans that are working under these name brands. And so that just expands it, you know what I mean? Like, if you can be passionate about buying cruelty-free makeup, you dive into what humans are going through in other countries to make that t-shirt. Yeah. And that conviction will flood over into all the areas of your life when you think about what you consume, like, as an American. Yeah. Household products, clothes, electronics. It's really... We love the iPhone, but I've heard, and I haven't done any research on this, but the iPhone apparently uses, like, lithium batteries that are sometimes mined by child workers in other countries. So it's like... And like I said, it can be very overwhelming because you're like, well, literally everything probably has an issue with it, so how are we supposed to choose? But It's a lot.
Yeah, that's also...
It's a lot, and it's
Okay, well, we don't
hard,
need
but
to go
it's
into all
not,
of it.
it's still worth knowing
Yeah.
and learning your convictions on it.
Yeah. Because
You
it
know.
is biblical.
It's biblical. It's important. Anyways.
Yeah. We digress.
We digress. Next. You want to go next?
Yeah.
Verse
okay. We're on
7.
verse 7. My subheading is patience in suffering.
Well, let's tie a bow on that last
Oh,
passage,
yes.
because it
Okay.
really ended up being about just the last couple verses, but really the whole passage is just like building up wealth.
Mm. But really, like, it is about wealthy oppressors.
Building up
ultimately.
unethical wealth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whether you consider yourself rich or not.
We're talking about like heart posture here.
Yes.
Like, I'm not.
And I have been there. Listen,
Yeah.
I have been there where those apps, it was Wish a while ago. I think now the new one is like
Temu.
Temu or
It was
something
Shein,
like that.
and now it's
Yeah,
Temu.
there's like all of these things, and I have bought from those websites.
I have too.
Heck yeah, I have.
I have too.
Now, granted, I haven't.
feel
in a
bad about
while.
it.
I feel bad about it. I'm at the point where if I'm like at a thrift store or something and I see something from Shein, I'm like, no, I'm not buying it.
I'm not even buying it
even though
from
the
a
money
thrift
has
store.
already been given to them.
We've
Now,
all been
granted,
there. I literally have.
I order from
still do
Amazon
that.
all the time, and I don't know. I've not done any research on Amazon. I'm sure there's
Well,
100 bajillion things that they're doing
The
wrong.
hard thing about Amazon is that Amazon is really just a warehouse
Yeah.
that is a bunch of other companies.
Yeah. So it's
You
so
know
hard
what
to
I
know.
mean? So researching Amazon would do you nothing. You'd have to research
Every individual
the
seller.
brand that you're buying from on Amazon.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Baby steps. If you're
Yes.
starting on this journey, baby steps. It's a lot, but it's
Yeah.
it's worth it.
I'm not claiming perfection, like,
Oh, me either.
by any means. But I do think there's something to be said for, like, just making note anytime you feel like your money and the saving of your money
Right.
is more important than whatever ethical issue might be wrong with that company that you can get something super cheap from.
Right.
It's just something, I think it's just something to think about.
It's something to think about for sure.
Anyways, okay.
We could
So,
go on and on about that type of stuff.
Verse
I got all
7.
kinds of information.
Patience in suffering.
Mine says patience and endurance.
Okay. Be patient then, brothers and sisters, until the Lord's coming. See how the farmer waits for the land to yield its valuable crop, patiently waiting for the autumn and spring rains. You too be patient and stand firm, because the Lord's coming is near. Don't grumble against one another, brothers and sisters, or you will be judged. The judge is standing at the door.
He's here.
I love that. Oh, and can I just say, I think a lot of people are very quick to say we're in the end times,
Yeah.
which
Who knows?
I mean, is there prophecy and stuff like that to look at? Yes, but there has been since Jesus ascended.
Right.
In James, they're saying his coming is near. He's standing at the door, like he's right there ready. I think he's always right there ready.
Mm-hmm. Well, he's ready because he has to be.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't know.
Yeah.
The Father is the only one that knows.
But this says the judge is standing at the door.
Is Jesus not the judge, or is it
I think
talking
that's
about
God.
Well, like the Father?
Yeah, the Father. Which
I don't
we
know.
can get into all the theology of the
I have no idea.
triune God, but
Let's look up the Greek word used for judge
Okay.
right there. Maybe we can figure it out.
yeah. Anyways, I say that to say, like, I think it is. There's one thing to be prepared, and I think we should always be living as if he's coming in the next
Yes.
moment.
Yeah.
But I think it is bold of us to be able to claim,
Like,
we're in the end times.
We're in
I
the
think
end
he's going to
times.
come within this amount of
within
years.
my
So
lifetime.
I think this is the generation that's going to see the
Right.
Lord's coming. Like that, I just
my
think that's
flesh,
bold.
my
of
flesh
us.
gets so irritated when people make claims like
I
that.
think that's bold of us.
And I say my flesh because, I mean, they could be right, but they also could be wrong.
Yeah, and listen.
Who knows? That's the point.
What verse is this?
I don't know.
Verse 9. I'm looking for
Verse 9. Don't grumble about each other.
I say all of that also being someone who, and I've talked to you about this. One of my struggles has been, I feel like I'm so putting myself on blast right now. One of my struggles has been that I haven't always wanted God to come back yet. Because I feel like I should...
You want to have babies.
This sounds so silly. I should be allowed to live my life. Like, here's my thinking. I feel like I was put through hell and back as a kid.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no way are you going to put me in that and then not let me live a good adult life. Absolutely not.
Oh
and
my
I'm
gosh.
like, bold of me to think that I get to put that stipulation on him.
I know, right?
But I do feel that way sometimes. And it's something that I am much more at the place now where I am, like, in my heart, I am so ready. Like, if he comes now, I am excited to spend an eternity worshiping him.
Oh, yeah.
But that flesh part of me still pokes out sometimes. And it's like, but wait, you have so much life to live. And I'm like, what is this life compared to that?
So many things to experience. It's nothing.
It's nothing.
It's but a vapor, as Solomon would say.
Okay, so judge.
Judge with a capital J. Who's it talking about?
This is James 5:9.
Verse 9.
Okay, so
It says, remember that Christ... Sorry.
I think it is talking about Christ here.
I think it
says,
is, too.
of Christ returning to sit in judgment.
Yes. My little commentary says, before you judge others for their shortcomings, remember that Christ, the judge, will come to evaluate each of us. So I think this judge here is Jesus, and he's standing at the door, like, waiting for the Father to be like, all right.
Waiting for him to open it.
Open it up, son. What
So
a
wild.
picture.
Can you imagine? Like, I just think about that.
That is literally happening in heaven right now.
In, like, the spiritual realm of, like Christ is our great intercessor. And, like, he is up there just rooting for us and being like, wait, but this. Wait, I did this for them. Wait, you can't pass this judgment on them because I did Like, you know what I mean? He's doing that
Lord. Seriously.
over and over and over again until the day that God says, okay, now open that door.
It's done.
And he gets to step from the heavenly... That rain.
I know.
He gets to step from the heavenly down onto earth again.
Into the earthly earth again.
I just think it's so cool to imagine, like, what is actually happening in the spirit realm right now as we're just
sitting here filming this podcast.
Doing our little human thing here on earth.
We're just doing our little human things, and
Crazy.
It is wild to me. Yeah, wait patiently.
Yes.
Consider the farmers who patiently wait for rain.
We say as the rain is
You too must
pounding.
be patient. Take courage, for the coming of the Lord is near. I love that it's like, don't waste time fighting.
Yes.
Like, just shut up. Stop grumbling with each other.
Yes. Which, not to keep going back to 1 Corinthians, but in that same passage, at the beginning of chapter 3, he says, I gave you milk, not solid food, for you were not yet ready for it. Indeed, you are still not ready. You are still worldly. For since there is jealousy and quarreling among you, are you not worldly? Like, I love how the quarreling and the contention and the grumbling between one another is so heavily highlighted throughout the whole New Testament.
Yes.
Like, it's like probably it's our biggest issue.
It sounds like it. As far as James and Corinthians goes, I'm like, all right, we
need to get it together.
We need to get it together. We don't like people very well. Like, we may be like, oh, I love you because you're my brother and sister in Christ, but when it comes to liking people, we're not very good at that. Verse 10.
All right. Brothers and sisters, as an example of patience in the face of suffering, take the prophets who spoke in the name of the Lord. As you know, we count as blessed those who have persevered. You have heard of Job's perseverance and have seen what the Lord finally brought about. The Lord is full of compassion and mercy. Above all, my brothers and sisters, do not swear, not by heaven or by earth or by anything else. All you need to say is a simple yes or no. Otherwise, you will be condemned. Which I feel like that's just such a random one-off.
Just say a simple yes or no so that you will not sin and be condemned. What is that?
I feel like that has nothing to do with patience and suffering, but that's okay. Doesn't have to.
I guess not. Hold on. Hold on a second. Okay, so we go through, wait patiently as the Lord is going to return, take courage, he's near, the judge is at the door.
Mm-hmm.
For examples of patience and suffering, dear brothers, blah, blah, blah. We give great honor to those who endure suffering. Look at Job.
Yeah.
He endured a lot of suffering. You can see how the Lord was kind to him in the end, for the Lord is full of tenderness and mercy. But most of all, never take an oath by heaven or earth or anything else. Just say a simple yes or no so that you will not sin and be condemned. Let me look at my commentary and see if this helps us connect anything.
I wonder if this is kind of in the realm of, like, inner vows.
Yeah.
You know,
an
like...
oath is an inner vow.
Because sometimes we think of swearing like, yes, I swear I will do this kind of thing. But I think in this context, it might be more on that line of inner vows of, like, if you if you are in the midst of suffering, maybe it's more of this idea of, like, I don't know, saying something like, I swear I will
I'll never be like my dad.
Do this again if I could
my...
just get through that. Like,
right.
I don't. Maybe that's not.
I don't know. So let me read this, and then maybe it's connecting back to when it's saying don't grumble about each other, because this says, people with a reputation for exaggeration or lying often can't get anyone to believe them on their word alone. Christians should never become like that. Always be honest so that others will believe your simple yes or no. By avoiding lies, half-truths, and omissions of the truth, you'll become known as a trustworthy person. And so maybe that's connected to, like, maybe that's why they're grumbling against each other.
Okay.
I don't know, because nobody can trust each other.
Yeah.
I don't know. We might be stretching for
yeah,
something
we might
that's
be
not
just
there.
like fishing when it's just
when it's just it is what it is. It's just a verse. It's basically just like be honest. Have patience, endure, and be honest. No half truths.
Something about that, like, swearing thing. The fact that it's like it says above all, like right after it does the patience and suffering, all of that. It says above all. So he's, like, drawing contrast between everything he just said, and then he's saying this should be above all. So to me, that means that somehow those are tied into each other. And I just don't understand how, because they don't, on surface level, they don't seem like they're really that connected. But I think I just need to maybe...
We maybe just need to do some more research.
Yeah.
Verse 13. Are any of you suffering hardships? You should pray. Are any of you happy? You should sing praises. Are any of you sick? You should call for the elders of the church to come and pray over you, anointing you with oil in the name of the Lord. Such a prayer offered in faith will heal the sick, and the Lord will make you well. And if you have committed any sins, you will be forgiven. Confess your sins to each other and pray for each other so that you may be healed. The earnest prayer of a righteous person has great power and produces wonderful results. Elijah was a human as we are, and yet when he prayed earnestly that no rain would fall, none fell for 3.5 years. Can you imagine? Then, when he prayed again, the sky sent down rain, and the earth began to yield its crops. So,
I love all of that. I love that just prayer and praise should be our default for everything.
Literally everything. No matter if you're happy, you're sad, you're suffering, you're going through something great. Like, it's always like, talk to God about it.
Yeah. Tell him about it.
Tell him about it.
Either lament or praise or whatever you need to do with those feelings. I also really love how in verse 14, it says, "Is anyone among you sick? Let them call the elders of the church to pray over them and anoint them with oil in the name of the Lord."
This is instruction. It's like...
Yeah. It highlights the order of the church and how significant the position of elder truly is.
Which we are learning that in our church right now. I mean, we've always had elders, but I think...
Just reestablishing their
their authority, like, in our church. We've been working on that, and wow. I had the elders lay hands on me and pray over me, and like had a significant like release of anxiety and stomach problems.
I just think we really need to give more credit to like the significance of the prayers of the elders. Because we have one of our elders who, when she prays over me, I literally have never felt safer in prayer. I've never felt safer. And sometimes, especially in like more Pentecostal,
charismatic
cultures, when people come and pray over you, it can feel a little...
It can get a little weird.
Sometimes you can feel like they're trying to force something to happen. And I never feel that with our elders, and especially...
Me either. Thank goodness.
This elder in particular. Like, there's just always such genuine... just wanting to see the Spirit move.
Yeah.
And letting the Spirit do His thing, and knowing that they are simply the vessel through which it is happening. They are not the one making it happen.
They're so strong.
Yeah.
Like, and they have so much faith.
Yeah.
I think that's something, obviously, that boosts the power and the authority that they carry is that all of them are such faith-filled people. Like, when I think about them personally, they're not faith-filled because they're elders. They're elders because they're faith-filled. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I love that.
Yes.
I love our elders.
It was the word of one of our elders that caused us to start this podcast.
Yeah,
I mean,
100%.
Like, it just is so significant. And we live in a culture in America where the celebrity pastor is all the rage.
Blah.
And churches are often driven forward by this sense of, how big can we get? How many followers can we get? How many people can we draw in?
Yeah.
And not to say that any of those things are inherently wrong. It's good to want to grow. It's good to want to get more people to come to church. It's good. All of those things are, at their most basic level, good. Yeah. But when we allow our flesh to say, it's about you. It's about your name out in front of that building. It's about your face on the posters. It's about, you. And I think that's why eldership is so important, because it takes it away from, like, the lead pastor is ultimately the head.
Spiritually.
Yes, under God, of course.
Yeah.
But there's such health in having elders, because if you have a true eldership and a healthy eldership, it prevents the idolatry of the lead pastor from happening.
Yeah, it's a checks and balances.
Yeah.
It's a lot like, well, I won't say it's a lot like government.
But it kind of is.
They're set up the same.
Yeah. And, you know.
They should function the same.
Yes.
But, like, it's a government. It's a body of
Yeah. And
people.
If our lead pastor feels like the Lord is leading us to something, or feels like He's calling us to do something, or whatever, it's never just him that makes that call. Yeah. He always takes it to the elders, and they pray and they seek the Lord, and He takes seriously what they have to say and what they say they're hearing from God. And so it's never just about him and what he wants or what he thinks is right.
It's so good.
And it's so healthy to have that, because it should never be about one person.
It should never be like, what is one person hearing from God?
Because then there's no confirmation in that.
Right. Every person is flawed. Like, there always needs to be collaboration.
Yeah.
Like, that's super, like, practical word, but, like, it really is collaboration with the Spirit with all these people.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's good.
Yes, I love that. It's the Spirit within one, recognizing the Spirit within the other.
Yeah. Okay, so eldership, and it starts talking about confessing your sins to each other.
Mm-hmm.
Pray for each other so that you may be healed.
That last part, the prayer of a righteous person is powerful and effective. I reference that piece of that verse all the time. Yeah. Like, it's just that simple. If you're a righteous person, your prayers are effective. Yeah. Your prayers are powerful.
Yeah. Something interesting just in my personal walk with the Lord that I've noticed is that I 100% believe that every single one of, well, there are still that are some in waiting, but most of my prayers that I've prayed to God, he has answered one way or another. Mm-hmm. He has never kept silent forever on my prayers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I always know he's either answered it, whether I like that answer or not, you know, it just kind of depends. But he's never been silent with me. But I've noticed there have been maybe a handful of times that I can remember praying to God in such anguish, like just sobbing and weeping and pouring my heart out to him and just saying, Lord, I literally can't do this, like, and just asking him for something that I literally don't have the strength to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I've noticed those 5 times, well, I don't know if it's 5, it's a handful. Those times that I remember just being so distraught while praying to him were the times that he most quickly answered my prayers. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And I don't know if that's, like, just a coincidence. I don't think it is. I don't really know. It's just something in my personal walk, because I notice, like, because when I, like, feel something really heavy, like, I cry about it. Yeah. And that's just a part of it for me. And I think when it says the earnest prayer, earnest is really important, because those were the prayers that I meant the most. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, it's easy to just sit here and pray and, like, talk to God about things and ask him for things. But the prayers that I was the most earnest about, that I was sobbing and weeping over, were the ones that, like, God answered the quickest.
Yeah.
And I see that in my life, and I'm like, wow. Yeah. Not that I should, like, make myself cry about everything so that he'll answer. That's not what I mean. I'm just, like, I remember those moments and those feelings.
And I think...
and how heavy they were, and how quickly he came to my rescue in those moments.
And I think also, like, even if he didn't answer them by necessarily giving you, like, because I've had moments like that, too, where just so distraught, like, weeping to the Lord. And it's not even, like, in every instance that he, like, answered the prayer in the sense of, like, giving me what I was asking for. No, but there was always such great comfort that I was okay to wait.
100%. Yeah, that's what I mean. I don't mean that he, like, gave me what I want or necessarily, like, gave me an answer about those specific moments. But, like, I remember one of them was simply, I was heartbroken about something in high school, and I was so emotionally a mess. I could not stop crying. Yeah. I was, like, on a downward spiral, and I got up and looked in the mirror, and I just said, Lord, make me stop crying. Like, regulate me, please. I can't take this. And it was almost instantaneous that I was just like,
yeah, it's just that peace beyond understanding.
I know. And so it was like, he didn't, like, you know, heal all my heartbreak in that moment. He didn't heal the situation, but, like, he brought me to a place immediately after saying those words to where I wasn't just a mess anymore. You know what I mean? I was able to control myself.
Yeah. So I remember, like, having a very similar moment like that in college, where I was going through just a heartbreak, and I remember, like, laying in my bed with my Bible and my journal open, and I, like, had worship music playing, and I was just, like, weeping, and like, I hadn't been able to sleep well. And I was like, Lord, I don't understand why this happened. Yeah. And I'm hurting so bad, and I can't sleep. I can't, like, do anything. Mm-hmm. And I remember in that moment of, like, I had every intention of, like, studying and journaling, and I remember I, like, laid down, and I was just crying and praying to the Lord, and I, like, fell asleep. Mm-hmm. And just, like, those little things that he does to comfort you. Yeah. and to show you that he hears you
Mm-hmm.
and he sees you. And it didn't, like you said, it didn't fix the situation.
Right.
It didn't necessarily heal my heartbreak right there in that
Right.
moment. Like, I was still feeling it for months
Right.
after that.
But he responded.
he responded.
That's the thing.
And I was able to rest
Yeah.
fully in him. Like, I knew.
It's like, oh
Like, in
my
that
gosh.
moment, I felt him so strongly
Right.
in that room. And I just knew that, like, he was there. And he was just giving me permission to rest.
Mm-hmm.
And that alone was enough to just, like, carry me through.
Carry you just to the next moment. Like,
Yeah.
it just got you through. Like, you were not consumed. Like, you made it to the next
Yes.
type of thing.
Yeah. And I think we just discredit God's compassion sometimes because it's so easy to look at the world around us and be like,
This has been an emotional episode.
it's so easy to look at the world around us or at our lives and just be like, God, why? Like, why is there so much bad?
Mm-hmm.
Why is there so much pain?
Yeah.
Why is there so much suffering? And yet he's so quick to comfort in
Yeah.
those moments. I think sometimes we just get so caught up in the asking of why
Mm-hmm.
that we forget that he's not just there to give us answers.
Yeah.
He's there to
He's
give
there
us
to
comfort.
respond. That's what I'm, like, making this distinction in my head as we're talking. Like, I don't need him to answer my questions. I don't need him to fix my problems. Like, I completely trust him to do all of that in his perfect timing. But, like, I do need him to respond sometimes.
Yeah.
And he always gives that to me.
Yeah.
He
I just
always
need to
responds.
know
Like,
you
I
hear
just
me.
need to know that you're there. I just need something.
Yeah.
I just need you to respond to what I'm giving you right now.
Yeah.
And he always does it every single time.
Yeah. And I think there might be people who maybe think that he doesn't. Like, maybe you've been in that place where
Yeah.
you've been crying out. Maybe you've done the classic, Lord, give me a sign.
Mm-hmm.
And you feel like he hasn't. And I would just challenge you to reassess, to look at it again, and just really be like, God, where were you actually? How did you actually respond? Because I know, like, saying this for me personally, I know that when we're in that moment where we desperately need to know that he is there, he always responds.
Yes.
I fully believe that.
Me too.
And so I think if we think he's not, it's not that he's not responding, it's that we're not realizing how.
Right. We're not catching on to how he's responding. It's like,
Yeah.
yes,
Because
I like that.
In my
That's good.
situation, I think it would have been so easy to just think I was just exhausted.
Mm-hmm.
I was just exhausted from crying. I was
Right.
exhausted from not sleeping. I was exhausted from not eating. Like, I was just exhausted, and that's why I fell asleep.
Right.
But no, like, I know that the Lord was giving me comfort and rest in that moment, and that was his response
Yeah.
to my cry.
Yeah.
And I think, I feel like there's so many people who are just missing his response to your cry.
Yeah.
And I just want to encourage you that he is responding.
Mm-hmm.
And he does care, and he does see you.
Yeah.
Um,
Might not look how you think or
Yeah.
what you're, he might not respond like how you're, in the way that you're looking for.
yeah.
But if we can just, like, open our minds and our hearts to other possibilities of, like, where was he in that moment?
Yeah.
Was he sitting metaphorically, was he sitting in a corner in the room that I wasn't looking at?
Yeah.
You know?
Ugh.
I'm, like, focused, sitting, you know, in your room, sitting on your bed, focused this way. Was he behind me, like, doing something that I just wasn't paying attention to? Was he...
Yeah. I think that's so, like, oh, I won't get into that. I'll start crying a lot, but
It's a lot. That's
Yeah.
such a good nugget, though.
yeah, he just does see us, and he does respond to us always.
Right.
Always, always. Okay, we got 2 verses left.
Also, but just to, like, see the importance of confessing your sins to each other, praying for each other so that you can be healed, bringing everything in the darkness to the light, And the miracle of what Elijah went through. No rain for 3.5 years because of a prayer.
And then when he prayed again, boom, it was back.
That's a miracle.
That is the Lord's favor.
That's so good. Okay, do you want to do the last 2 verses?
Sure.
Okay.
Verse 19, my brothers and sisters, if one of you should wander from the truth and someone should bring that person back, remember this. Whoever turns a sinner from the error of their way will save them from death and cover over a multitude of sins.
That's good. My little heading for this is called Restore Wandering Believers.
I don't have a heading for this one. I love that.
My dear brothers
it makes
and
me
sisters.
think of
Certain people in your life?
Well, yes, but in our last episode, when you were talking about how we were talking about our struggles, and you said, you know, sometimes I struggle to speak the truth in love because I don't want to make them hurt. And I just think, like, but if we can turn someone from the error of their way, if we can speak that truth and turn them, we are saving them from death. We're saving them from death.
Yeah. It's honest. It's more loving to tell them the truth than not.
Yeah. It's so good.
Oh,
well,
that was a good one.
That is James.
That's the book of James, y'all.
We are done with James. Thanks for sticking it out with us and just being here. And we appreciate all the support and the love. At this point, we've only released episode 1 at the time that we're filming this. And so we have no idea how the next episodes are going to be. But we appreciate all the support on the first episode. And we're just so excited to continue doing this. We just feel such a burden on our hearts to share the word. And
we're going to be praying about what book of the Bible to do next. There might be some fun little, like, interviews, maybe like a testimony episode sprinkled in here and there, but we're going to stick to studying and, you know, mainly. And
it'll probably be, you know,
do that. So we're going to be in prayer about what we're going to study next, and it's going to be great.
It's going to be great.
It's going to be me. I love it. What was your main takeaway from this?
Honestly, that last part, I think, just
God hearing our prayers.
Yeah, just his kindness to always respond.
Yeah.
He's just so kind. I love him. I love him so much. I love you, Lord.
I love you, Lord. Oh, your mercy never fails me in all my days. Can you tell that we're church? Can you tell? All right, y'all. Thank you so much for joining. We will see you back next time.
Where we'll be studying something.
Where we'll be studying next time.
We don't know yet.
All right. See ya.
Bye.